Sorry, you're on mute.
Gosh, sure am. I don't know how that happened. All right, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. It's your DC Spotlight for July 11th, 2023. We're just basically 1 week away from San Diego Comicon. If you're there, hit me up. Make sure you follow me on social media. If you're not there, I'm going to be live streaming or live tweeting, I should say, some panels. I'm going to be talking to creators. I'm going to be taking a lot of pictures. So it's a good time. One of these days, we'll get Rocky out there so he can meet a lot of these creators and go to a lot of the parties. It's interesting. Last year was the first year it came back, and there were some growing pains. There were some adjustments to be made because of the pandemic. I feel like I got less press invites than previous years, more than I did for WonderCon this year with the writer's strike. It's been really strange. And so I didn't know what to expect. There's going to be plenty to cover, especially comic-wise still. But my after show hours is what has actually filled up first. So I've been getting more party invites than press invites. So it's a great problem to have. I mean, don't get me wrong. Most of these parties are open bar, so I just got to remember to pace myself. I've been in training for the past couple of weeks. I've been having a drink or two every day, which is not my normal things that I did in my 20s, but trying to build up my tolerance. Yeah, it's going to be a fun time. Be sure you're following the Comic Source, like I said, on social media, so you can check it out. So that being said, we're going to dive into this week's DC books. Night Terrors is the big thing ongoing. There still are a few non-Night Terrors titles to kind of hold us over. I would say overall, I was really disappointed with the first week of Night Terrors, which is saying something, right? Because I had zero expectations, didn't think it was going to be very good, and it didn't even meet those very, very low expectations I had. First week was just terrible, to be honest. This week's an improvement for Night Terrors. I was pretty impressed. I think just to kind of talk about it overall, the art in this second round, the second week of Night Terrors books, was a lot better. And I talked a lot about the art the first time. I didn't like the art in most of the first issues. And I get what DC's trying to do. You're trying to capture the mood of horror. The colors are going to be muted. They're going to be darker. It's not going to be bright, vibrant colors. The art's going to be a little more muddy. That's just the nature of art for a horror book. But I really felt the art was subpar. Because you look at this week's books, it's still that moody type of coloring, and the art still is a little more moody. It's not quite as sharp. It's not the bright color. It's not traditional comic book art. But you look at something like the art on Green Lantern, right? Eduardo Panseca, same artist that's doing the regular Green Lantern book, same artist that's worked with Jeremy Adams recently on his Flash run. It's still his sharp pencils, but it has a different feel because of the little more, like I said, visceral. The colors are a little darker, but it still works. It's still great art. So I think that for me was just a failure the first week on art. The art quality just wasn't there. Because as much as I still am not a fan of doing a horror event in the middle of summer here, I didn't read these books and go, man, I hate this. I was just like, okay, story might not be for me, but at least they're good, well-made comics. I just can't say the same about that first week. I don't know. What do you think, Rocky?
Well, I was slightly I was slightly in a better mood with the first week than you were. I had low expectations, but it was slightly higher than my low expectations. And I will say though that Night Terror's First Blood was not bad, but this second week is better. Night Terror's #1. All these names are so similar, it's kind of confusing, but it's actually Night Terror's First Blood was last week. Night Terror's #1 is this week, and it actually is a much better comic book, and it should have been the comic that started everything off, quite frankly. It was just really a lot of strategic and narrative errors in the way this event started off. But I agree with you that there's the art on all the covers are fantastic, and I have tried to display some of those for those watching on the YouTube channel. But for those of you who are listening on the Comic Source podcast, by all means, Google the covers of these because I mean, hey, I broke down. I became a hypocrite. I bitch about covers, but as I said, I've done some cover buys here in this event just because I love the covers, and particularly I love the midnight variants, and I hope to get most of those. But yeah, it's going to be I'm just going to be interesting to hear your thoughts as we go through these night terrors, and of course we got some non-night terror comics as well, which frankly I liked even more. But
Yeah, and again, so many covers. What I've taken to doing when we get these press previews, I go through. I try to guess who the artist is on the cover, see how good my skills are. But man, a lot of these newer ones, it's like I'm seeing art. I was like, okay, I don't know who did this art. Can't figure it out. I go and I look at the credits, and I'm like, well, it's because I've never heard of this person ever before. But you're right; those midnight variants, the red and black ones, they're all by Dustin Nguyen, and they're fantastic. So let's go ahead and dive in. Night Terrors number 1, Dead on Arrival, written by Joshua Williamson, art by Giuseppe Camuncoli, Stefano Nisi, and Casper Wingard. Colors by Frank Martin and Wingard. Letters by Troy Petrie. As Rocky said, you could almost think of Night Terror's First Blood as like a prelude, and then this is really the first issue of the spine series, if you will, or the main series that all these other titles are going to tie into. So if you're looking to experience Night Terror, but not looking to break the bank and don't want to read, about every individual series, this is the one you should probably read. We saw in that First Blood series that Deadman basically took over Batman. Everybody else in the DCU, for the most part, is asleep. Batman's awake because Deadman has possessed him. So you get some context, you get some history from Deadman. He's narrating. He's almost breaking the fourth wall, so to speak. He confronts the villain of Night Terrors, this Insomnia. We were told in First Blood that he was a god. He's the god of nightmares. He's looking for the Nightmare Stone, which is this artifact that helps control dreams and what have you. That's not exactly the case, right? We see Deadman here trying to possess Insomnia and realizing that everything he said is basically a bunch of BS. He was an inmate at Arkham Tower. He somehow he had some mental health issues. Somehow during the Lazarus Reign event, he was infected and gained these powers. We did see, I don't remember if it was in one of the Lazarus Reigns one shots. I think it was.
yeah,
I don't think it was comics where we saw this cell door and we saw Lazarus Reign like penetrating it, and it was a hint of what's to come. That must have been this guy's cell. And so he gained these powers to be able to step into people's nightmares, and Deadman's like, you're not a god, you're just some dude. And he repossesses Batman, even though he knows, because when he leaves Batman's body, Batman basically collapses and he's asleep. So he animates Batman again, he leaves. He's going to go try to find clues about who this guy is and what have you. And he says, yeah, I know Batman would be mad if he knew I was possessing his body, but I couldn't leave his body behind. I need to go and help, solve this. And the other thing that's great, as he like leaps out of this building, he says, say what you want about Batman, but the dude works out. He's easily the most fit person I've ever possessed. So I love that line. So how and what exactly Deadman is going to do to try to figure out and stop Insomnia, we're not really sure, other than to say he's gone and recruited the help of the hero who's probably most associated with working with dreams, and that's Sandman, not Sandman Morpheus, but Sandman Wesley Dodds. And if you're thinking, no, he couldn't have, Wesley Dodds is dead. Well, like I said, Deadman is possessing Batman's body. Batman still, of course, because he's Batman, still has some Lazarus resin. So Deadman goes and gets a Lazarus resin, uses it on Wesley Dodds. It's not really enough to fully bring Wesley back. But yeah, Zombie Sandman is what we're told in the teaser. To be continued in The Brave and the Bizarre. Zombie Sandman and Batman/Deadman team up, because it's Batman's body, Deadman's spirit controlling it, teamed up with undead Wesley Dodds. And so I gotta say, as much as I haven't been looking forward to this series, this event, and as much as I didn't care much for the first week, this is fun. This is fun. A zombie Sandman, an undead Wesley Dodds teamed up with a Batman with Deadman's body. or sorry, Dead Man with Batman's body. That's fun. That's fun. And there were some great lines. Actually, kudos to the writers of this week's books because there were every book had at least one kind of laugh out loud line that was pretty amusing. So yeah, I thought this was great. The art again much stronger. I'm not familiar with Stefano Nessi, but Casper Wingard, very talented artist. Giuseppe Camicola, also very talented. So it didn't bother me that there was three different artists in this. I didn't really notice it. They did a good job of merging their styles together. So yeah, overall, I was pretty impressed. I got to agree with you, Rocky. This was the book to start off with, not that First Blood debacle. So anyway, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, and in fact, it wasn't. It was actually that free comic book day debacle as well, which I didn't think was was particularly good. And last week's First Blood was not. It was okay, but this was by far. This is the event, and you know this. I feel like Jeff. I feel like Joshua Williamson is channeling some aspect of Jeff Johns in doing this. But this should have been this should have been the free comic book day issue, and it should have started off like this, and every single issue of this event should have some revelation like this. Zombie Sandman is so cool. I'm just thinking, look at every hero of the DC universe or even villain that has some connection to the dream world in some capacity or way, and resurrect them, bring them back. That's kind of cool. This is the excitement, and I'm really curious to know. I'll be honest, it's been so long since I read a Wesley Dodds JSA story. I mean, there was a reference to JSA Classified #8 and some editorial notes in this comic. I'm just glad to see Wesley Dodds back. I'm interested to get to know him again, even as a zombie. This is cool stuff. This was what I like to see. We get some more information about Insomnia here. We were introduced to the character that would become Insomnia in a completely forgettable Lazarus Planet story involving the Huntress. In fact, I remember you and I criticized the story because it was completely pointless. It was Huntress. It was a story involving the Huntress going back into Arkham Asylum, which we thought had already been cleaned out, and there shouldn't be any patients in Arkham Asylum anymore because that storyline had all but gone. But there were still patients in Arkham Asylum, and Lazarus Reign leaked into the asylum. It was a pointless story with a Huntress and beating up a bunch of Arkham Asylum.
Was it Arkham Asylum or
Arkham Tower? Sure,
Right.
sorry, Arkham Tower. Yeah, it all blends in after a while, but yeah, it's Arkham Tower, and yeah, there's this random patient there that we saw in the end get infected with Lazarus Reign, and whoop-de-doo, and it ends up this particular character managed to obtain the superpower of being able to hide and to spy on people's dreams. And this person became Insomnia. Now, how was it that Insomnia feels that he was betrayed by the heroes of Batman and what have you? What did Insomnia see in the dreams of people that he was spying on them? I don't know. But it's worth noting that Joshua Williamson makes a point of drawing a similarity between Deadman and Insomnia, namely that both of them, in a sense, sort of spy on other people's dreams. It's also interesting to note that Deadman traditionally was able to possess the bodies of living people, not necessarily dead people. And Deadman here, when he tries to possess Insomnia, he actually that's where we discover Insomnia's origin. But oddly enough, unlike most people, Deadman can't seem to access any of Insomnia's happier memories because Insomnia is keeping them hidden. So there's some mysteries there that we don't know. We also know that the Nightmare Stone that Insomnia is looking for, presumably to give him some power over the waking world, that he's got to find the Nightmare Stone as soon as possible, because Insomnia's power over the waking world, he loses more and more of his power in the waking world the longer he goes without finding the Nightmare Stone. We know that the Nightmare Stone was created by a sacrifice, perhaps related to Wesley Dodds. We know that Dr. Destiny used to possess the stone. John Dee ultimately stole it and became afraid of it and sort of hid it away somewhere. And there is, interestingly enough, after Deadman fights Insomnia here, Insomnia then sends his Sleepless Knights out, and we are told that specifically the Sleepless Knights search for the Nightmare Stone in the waking world, and it's in the dreams that Insomnia searches for the Nightmare Stone in the dream worlds, where all the heroes and villains are basically falling asleep. I was a little confused because Insomnia tells the Sleepless Knights, he gives them an order to kill all those who are still awake in the waking world, which I find surprising, because what if you kill the person in whose dream the Nightmare Stone is located. Isn't that a bad thing? So I thought that maybe was a little of a bit of a plot error, but maybe it's not. But presumably, he thinks that the Nightmare Stone is somewhere in the minds of one of the heroes. Um, Again, you know, this is a really great introductory issue. You get to know Deadman again. We once again get a repeat of Deadman's origins. We got that in the First Blood. We got that in the Free Comic Book Edition. We get it yet again here. There's a lot of repetition here. I can't help but to feel, if I'm being critical, if I'm being constructively critical, this is a lot of information is repeated that we got twice before already, and that's I think unnecessary. If they'd have done this, Williamson had planned this a little bit better. But the story is more intriguing. I would recommend that people, only need to read probably, I'm guessing, Night Terrors issues 1 through 4. I think there's 4 issues of that, and don't read anything else, because you'll probably get the gist of it in these 4 issues. And once again, the criticism of all the Night Terrors books this week, all part 1, which will encompass Green Lantern, Flash, and Shazam, is that and Robin, Tim Drake Robin with Tim Drake Robin with Red Hood. None of them are looking for the Nightmare Stone. So no one's actually looking for the Nightmare Stones for all these corollary issues with all these heroes. Insomnia's in all of them in some different form or capacity, but he's not actually looking for the Nightmare Stone. So the entire premise of this story, as set forth so far in the Free Comic Book Day issue, First Blood, and in this first issue of Night Terrors, as interesting as it potentially is completely squandered in the collateral issues, because it just focuses on the nightmares of the heroes, which, frankly, I think is unfortunate, because I'm more interested in the story. If the story is worth telling, then I want that story to unfold, as opposed to just tell me what the nightmares are of the heroes, which, frankly, as a longtime reader, I already know what they are. I'm not a new reader, and I question how many new readers are coming on board for this. But that's me being a little bit cynical. But I'm enjoying this more this week than I did last week, which is a good thing.
Yeah, I agree 100%. You wonder, Ravager, the first week, Ravager felt like the most important of the ancillary series. Like her series, her second issue may have the most to do with the stone. For this one, I'd say it's Green Lantern for this week, but I guess we'll have to wait and see, because those two seem to be more aware than the others that they're sleeping. When it comes to covers, the main cover by Yvonne Reese, we're talking about covers, is absolutely fantastic. There's a neon version of that. I don't know if it's a ratio or not, but we don't have the preview. They didn't send us the neon one, but man, I'm not buying any of these, but I might be tempted to check out that neon one. But when it comes to covers, you have a favorite. Is it the Matina there? Is it the Doc Shaner? Doc Shaner's a callback. That's Alex Maleev. And then the Matina is the dead man, where his face is like all melted.
Yeah,
that's the friend.
Boy, it's tough. I really like the Matina one with the dead man, is really good. But I also like the black. It looks like an almost black and white one with. I'm not sure who that is, with Dead Man.
Well, I think be Batman, Batman, but because he's possessed by Dead Man, it's kind of like a mashup between the two.
That's why I like it, because because it actually is, it's relevant to what's going on in the story. It's actually related to the content of the story, which I think is so crucial. It's, how often do I bitch about that I want covers that are some way related to the actual story, and these covers actually are in different capacities, and that's what I like about it.
Yeah, there's 2 versions of the Alex Maleev. The black and white one is a 1 in 50 variant. The one that has colors, the B cover. So, all right, well, let's move on. The first of the ancillary series, we'll talk about Night Terror Shazam #1. Written by Mark Waid. Roger Cruz handles the pencils. Wellington Diaz handles the inks. Arif Prianto on colors, with Troy Petrie doing letters. I do like that it's Mark Waid, the regular writer of Shazam, that's doing this. The Roger Cruz pencils are very strong. I feel, and the colors from Arif Prianto as well. I feel like of all the books this week, this is the one that has the most sort of traditional comic art, and the colors that are most closely similar to what you would see in just a regular Shazam book. So even though this is tied into the Night Terrors event, I like it because it's Mark Waid who's doing the regular Shazam book. So he's adding, even though he's telling a Night Terror story, he is getting a chance to do some character work and add a little context that he can pick up the threads of later on in his regular Shazam book. But it focuses on Mary Marvel, her nightmare being that Shazam has gone bad. And it's interesting to see Shazam, the Billy Batson Shazam, in here because he very much looks like Black Adam, right? Because he's a nightmare version of himself. So his costume is black and gold, kind of like Black Adam's is, as opposed to the red and gold that you normally see. Again, there are some hints here about perhaps what might be to come in the regular Shazam book, because in that book now, the other members of the Shazam family, Pedro, Eugene, Darla, Freddy, they don't have access to the Shazam powers. They don't have access to the power of Shazam right now. And so it's a departure from what Jeff Johns had done in the past. So is this a hint that could be changing? I guess we'll have to wait and see. Don't see Sleepless Nights here, or do we? Which again, that's just a fan. You mentioned them from this regular first issue. I didn't. That's just a fantastic name, right? Like, we know this is Night Terrors. That's a play on it because it's night with a K. And then Sleepless Nights, as in, I can't go to sleep. I have insomnia. There we go again. But it's his knights, his messengers, his whatever you want to call them, his army. The fact that he calls them Sleepless Nights, interesting play on words. But anyway, I enjoyed this. I enjoyed Mary Marvel. Again, it's a lot of character work for her. If you're not familiar with who Mary Marvel is, but you're curious about her, this is actually a great book to pick up because Mark Waid gets to the core of who the character is. She's somebody who just by her nature wants to take care of people. She wants, especially her family. Her family is very important to her. So, of course, her nightmare would be that she's unable to protect them. They're in danger. Billy's betraying her. So, to your other point, Rocky, about, yeah, we sort of know that this would be the nightmare of or the greatest fear, if you will, of these heroes, because we know these heroes so well. But somebody who doesn't, you're going to get a good feel in this issue of what Mary Marvel would fear. And again, the Roger Cruz pencil is very strong. I think the last time we saw Roger Cruz art was on the Josh Robin series, and his art here is fantastic. Great storytelling, interesting visuals. He gets a chance to do a lot of fun stuff because, again, it is Mary's nightmare, right? So things like driving off of cliffs and getting into a taxi where the floor of the taxi's like a little pool where you can soak your feet while the taxi's taking you to where you go. Maybe that's more of a dream for some people than a nightmare. But art's fantastic. It's a lot of fun. So I thought this was a particularly good issue this week, and no idea where it's going because, again, I have a feeling that that Mary's going to be crucial to the story going forward. So we'll see. What are your thoughts?
Well, I actually like what Mark Waid does here. He does look. I really do think that every single writer who is involved in these types of events, particularly these types of ridiculously predictable plot lines, I think you're handed a bunch of lemons, and the best you can do is hope you made some lemonade and that the readers are actually enjoy it. Because I think this is such a challenge to longtime readers to enjoy because. Enlighten me. Tell me what I don't know about Batman. Tell me what I don't already know about Green Lantern in terms of what he fears. Or now tell me something I don't know. That's a challenge for a writer, for us longtime readers. But now Mary Marvel, I don't pretend to be an expert on her, but Mark Waid does manage to tell a decent story here. And it's a fun story. And we also learned a little bit about Mary Marvel's new powers because we know Mary Marvel does have a new patron goddesses. And they're Amazon goddesses. And the M in Shazam for the Amazon god is Minerva. And it's revealed here for the first time, I believe, that it's speculated that Mary Marvel gets some clairvoyant powers from Minerva. So Minerva's wisdom gives some gift of clairvoyance to Mary Marvel. And it's that gift of clairvoyance that might help Mary Marvel defeat insomnia. Probably in part 2. This is just part 1. But I like what Mark Waid does here. Mark Waid exemplifies what hopefully all these stories together will do for new readers, that you can come on board and read about these heroes and know what their fears are. That's a good way of getting to know them, especially if you're not, even Batman, if you haven't read Batman in 15, 20 years, you could probably guess, but, there's some details. Devil's always in the details. But I like that Mary Marvel here, she fears losing her family. She fears losing all her orphan brothers and sisters, and she fears failing them. And and that really is played up here to great effect. I like the fact that Black Adam is in here. It's Black Adam is the one, the image of Black Adam, or it's actually, pardon me, it's actually Billy Batson in the wearing a Black Adam's outfit. It's actually Shazam. It's Captain Marvel in Black Adam's outfit that talks to her in the dream and talks about how she's going to fail Darla, Eugene, Pedro, and Freddy, and they blow up in the house, and it's just horrible. And it's interesting that Captain Marvel is wearing Black Adam's outfit here, and this is all in Mary's dream. And I couldn't help but wonder, as somebody as a longtime reader, I harken back to the JSA series where Mary Marvel was actually kind of an underling of Black Adams for a while. There's some great JSA stories where Mary Marvel wears the black outfit with the black Mary Marvel outfit. She looks all sexy and stuff. It sort of harkened back to there, and so I got some good memories, good Pyrian fanboy memories of that storyline. And I like this, and I like the art. Roger Cruz's art was really good. Wellington Diaz on the colors, great job, and I was entertained, and I'm really curious to see where this goes. And in particular, I'd like to see some further revelations. Can we learn more about maybe how Mary Marvel's powers are different? Because it's something that DC, I hope, explores. If Billy Batson he's got his own set of gods. We know Black Adam has his own set of Egyptian gods now. And we know Mary Marvel has her Amazonian gods. Who's to say that the powers of Captain Marvel, Shazam, and Black Adam, they don't have to be the same anymore? They can be significant differences between the two. And the hint at Mary Marvel having clairvoyance, hopefully that's just not in the dream, but in reality, I think just it tells me that I might get something out of this story other than just an interesting tale. We might actually get some actual character evolution.
Favorite cover for this issue?
Favorite color for this issue? Well, man, I'm gonna have to go with the bleeding Shazam one. I don't know who drew it. It looks like Captain Marvel, but the red is bleeding off his costume. I don't know who that artist is.
Hayden Sherman.
Yeah, that's my favorite. What about yourself?
I got to go with the Dan Mora, although Jerry Ordway classic when drawing Shazam always, and the Freddie Williams Jr. one with the town on fire with the Shazam symbol are both cool too. But yeah, I got to go with the Dan Mora. Just fantastic. Because, like I said, in the book, in the interiors, it is possible to, but just glancing at it, to think it's Black Adam and not Shazam, like an evil version of Shazam. When you look at the cover, because of the way it's colored, how Billy is sort of gray with the purple eyes, it looks more like Billy, but an evil nightmare version. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. All right, up next we have Night Terror's Green Lantern #1. This is from regular Green Lantern scribe Jeremy Adams. As I mentioned earlier, Eduardo Panseca handles the pencils, Julio Ferrer on inks, colors by Luis Guerrero, and letters by Dave Sharp. This one ties in really well to the regular series in terms of the last issue of the regular series that we had, issue 2, ended with Hal and Carol Ferris's fiance, all on a plane, and then all of a sudden the pilots go, "Oh no, there's an emergency. What are these nightmares for?" Or they don't call them nightmares, but what are these monsters? What are these things flying in the sky with us? And then this picks right up from there. So what were your thoughts on this?
Well, once again, the covers are fantastic. And Perillo has a great cover for cover A. And I'm not even sure who does cover B. Forgive me, maybe you could mention it, but the covers are fantastic.
Cover B looks like Derek Robertson from The Boys.
Yeah,
fame.
Good stuff. Yeah, no, it's really good, and I even like the Midnight variant covers, quite nice too.
I take that back. Derek Robertson does the. He's the one that did the
Sinestro one.
Sinestro one, yeah.
That's a good one too. Yeah, just really great covers here. No surprises here. I should say Mike Deodato does a great cover as well with Green Hal Jordan with, I think that's supposed to be Parallax in the background there. That looks amazing. Yep. But this story is actually, when I think back to my conversation that Trevor, Dark Knight Nation, Trevor Lankevich and I had at the Calgary Expo with Jeremy Adams. All the stuff that he was talking to us in terms of hinting and sort of dropping some innuendos is played out in this issue, and that's why I just had a smile on my face reading it, because Jeremy Adams does indeed have the attitude that when he was given the homework assignment of, this is, night terrors, you got to, come up with something that Hal Jordan fears. It's like, come on, it's Hal Jordan. Nothing. He's a man without fear, for God's sakes. He's a Green Lantern. What does he fear? And what I really liked about this is Green Lantern, Doorway to Death. This basically, last issue ended. It interrupted Jeremy Adams' Green Lantern run, but they're attacked by these sleepless night zombies, I guess, the Insomnia's army, and right away, this issue starts off with Hal Jordan. He confronts, all of a sudden, he's at his father's funeral. He's at his father's funeral, and, he's, you can tell by the voice that Jeremy Adams is giving a young Hal, or I guess Hal, that, he knows where he's at. Hal always has his state of mind. Hal never really falls for it. He never really becomes fearful at any point. He's surprised and he's shocked, and he's taken aback even, and even when this monster comes out of his father's coffin, and he initially reacts and runs away, but at the end of the day, he runs into Carol Ferris, and all of a sudden it's like we're getting his origin again, where he gets into a test ship. He's talking to Carol Ferris, and she's giving him shit for not showing up on time. All the classic sort of Hal Jordan, Carol Ferris conversations, and the rocket ship ends up getting pulled away, just like his origin is, and he ends up in front of Abin Sur. In many ways, this is a very predictable. Jeremy Adams is really taking Hal Jordan through sort of we're getting the Cosmos version of certain of the high points of Hal Jordan's life. His father's funeral, him becoming Green Lantern, his relationship with Carol Ferris, all those formative events, and all in a way to lead to the fact that Abin Sur thinks that Hal Jordan is a failure, and that he's going to amount to nothing, and that in his nightmare, Abin Sur lures Hal Jordan to the ship just to take Hal Jordan's to take his energy, to drain him so that he can become alive and Hal Jordan can be rejected, and that Hal Jordan ultimately will be left alone. Because one of the things that plays out with Hal Jordan is, because Hal Jordan's always been in space, and this even played out in Grant Morrison's Green Lantern as well. Hal Jordan is very much, he might be a Top Gun Maverick, but like Top Gun Maverick, he's alone. Maybe he gets laid a lot by different space species, and maybe he's trans or space sexual, or whatever the word is, pansexual, as it was going around there. But the reality is that I think that I think Jeremy Adams just wrote Hal Jordan right here. His fear is being alone, because what does he have if Carol Ferris isn't around, and he doesn't have the green? What is he without the ring? What is Hal Jordan without the ring? And that ultimately is what happens. He confronts his fear when the nightmare version of Abin Sur takes him on, and then the Guardians are right there rejecting him as Green Lantern of Sector 2814. And again, by this time though, the moment he sees, it's almost like when Hal Jordan, the moment that scene begins, when he sees the Guardians of Oa. He's always had a combative relationship with the Guardians of Oa, and then Hal Jordan's willpower really starts to manifest itself as the story progresses, and it really comes full throttle when the Guardians show up. And then at the end, I mean, that was probably Insomnia's biggest mistake, because when one of the Guardians turns into what I'm assuming is a version of Insomnia, Insomnia even admits and says, you know what, you've out of all the people on the planet, you've been the best at this. You've handled this fear the best. So there's a hell of a compliment that is given to Hal Jordan here, which I think is completely appropriate, and that's what I like. Hal Jordan, he handles it well, and then of course the issue ends with Parallax showing up, and Hal Jordan showing no fear, diving right into attack Parallax, and that's kind of what. I like it. I like it. Was there anything new here? Was it saying anything new about Hal Jordan? No, but what I like about it was that Jeremy Adams is saying, look, okay, maybe this is a big event, but is this that big event in Hal Jordan's life? I'm thinking not. No. Hal Jordan has been through this. He's done that. He hasn't forgotten. He's got the willpower to do it. This is a guy that willed into existence his own Green Lantern ring. He can take on Parallax, the embodiment of fear in the galaxy. He can sure as hell do it again in the form of a dream. And that's why I liked it. It reminded me why Hal Jordan is a Top Gun Maverick, cool, kick-ass character. And I thought that Adams did a great job with this, and the art as well. Eduardo Panzico on the art is fantastic. Julio Ferreira did the inks. Louis Guerrero, the colorist. Dave Sharp, the letterer. Everything came together really amazing on this, and I really like the backup too. But what are your thoughts on the main story?
Yeah, you kind of said it all. I don't really have much to add. I mean, time and again, Insomnia is trying to show Hal Jordan something that's going to scare him, and he's time and again he fails. All these moments, like you said, seminal moments, important moments, formats in the life of Hal Jordan, going back to when he was a child, and saying, this was a moment of fear. No, not really. It might have been a momentous moment. It might have been a moment that stands out in Hal Jordan's mind. And there may have been twinges of fear, but he was always able to overcome that with the willpower that is his superpower. So not a surprise that Insomnia has to keep, changing the channel, as it were, on whatever nightmare or whatever idea he thinks that Hal Jordan is going to overcome or be scared of. Because every time he overcomes, no matter what it is, no matter seeing his father's coffin, being selected as a Green Lantern because of Abin Sur's fatal wreck, crash, what have you. He overcomes. He doesn't freeze up. He doesn't give up. He finds a way to fight through. So, yeah, good stuff from Adams, and I agree with you on the art. Absolutely fantastic. The backup with Sinestro, like you mentioned, very interesting as well. What would Sinestro fear? So it's written by Alex Segura, Mario Fox Focillo, I think, or Focillo. It's Foccillo. I would think it's Focillo or Focillo.
Fakilo,
Yeah, Placido Ra does the colors, and then Dave Sharp on letters. What would we say Sinestro fears? Well, Sinestro fears being powerless, having no power, being nothing, not even being recognized. And so it's an interesting trip through his nightmare, getting beat up just by some guy that he accidentally bumps into on the street. And the guy, kind of gives him a look and idiot. And Sinestro immediately, being Sinestro, turns around, fist raised as he's going to, use the power of his ring. How dare you? He's going to do something bad to this guy. He doesn't have a ring. He doesn't have any power. And then the guy basically punches him, knocks him out in one punch. So yeah, that's what Sinestro fears. Again, this is not new ground. We're not treading anything new here. So you kind of wonder, what was the point of this? I kind of rather would have had more Hal Jordan. But I like Sinestro, and the art's pretty fantastic. But to have 8 pages of this, when it's clear within the first, 2 pages what Sinestro fears, and it makes perfect sense. He fears being powerless, being inconsequential, not being able to affect things. I don't know where it goes from here. So we are reminded in the story of kind of the current status quo of Sinestro. That to me was a little more useful than being shown that Sinestro fears having no power, no influence, being a nobody. Because I had sort of forgotten. We saw Sinestro in the first issue of Jeremy Adams' Green Lantern. We know he's on Earth. He doesn't have his power ring. He's sitting around drinking in a bar. But yeah, I forgot that he went through the whole thing, or he was on the Injustice League with Lex Luthor, got powered up by what Luthor was doing, and then into the Dark Crisis event, being powered up even more, and then losing it all. And so, yeah, like, where is he? It's Sinestro. He's a iconic DC villain. He'll be back. He'll have a power ring. He'll have access to the Yellow Lantern at some point. But how we're going to get from where he is now to there, I'm interested to see what Jeremy Adams is going to do. Because, again, we're reminded of where Sinestro is. And this isn't Adams even writing this. This is Alex Segura. But we know from the first couple issues of Jeremy Adams' Green Lantern run that Sinestro is going to be in there in some shape or form, which makes sense. I mean, when you talk about Sinestro, we know he's an arch villain for the Lanterns and for Hal Jordan specifically. So good stuff. Art was great. Color work was great. So just I question how necessary it was, but I did enjoy it. What'd you think?
Well, I thought it was interesting that the final in the final page of the Sinestro backup, Sinestro confronts a multi-headed version of himself with that, and every version of himself has a all the seven heads have a third eye, and even the hands, even this multi-handed and multi-headed, multi-limbed Sinestro has a third eye and even an eyeball in the middle of the hand. And I'm wondering what that means. And I'm wondering if an additional fear that Sinestro has is almost becoming an omniscient, all powerful, and indifferent, just like the Guardians. Because this is this is my own headcanon here, but I look at this image of this multi-headed Sinestro, and this is in Sinestro's nightmare. So Sinestro must fear this version of himself, because remember what Insomnia told Batman, that he corrected Batman, saying, Batman, I'm not giving you your fears, you're the one that's creating these fears. I just have the ability to make you create your fears to life. And so we know that Sinestro's nightmare appears to involve himself. And this is a version of himself that is still a Green Lantern and is multi-headed and is almost godlike. And that's very, very curious. And I'm curious what Alice Segura, who's the writer here, because it's not PKJ who's writing the back, as you know, I guess wrongly believed it was at first. I'm curious to what part two of this is going to say for Sinestro and what this has to do with his nightmare. So the whole issue sort of intrigues me, and I'm actually finding myself oddly curious as to more of how the Sinestro story is going to end, because I have a sneaking suspicion I know how the Green Lantern one's going to end. But yeah, no, it was pretty good. So the next one is we're on.
Yeah, Night Terror's Robin.
Robin.
Which,
Yeah.
yeah, one of the weaker ones of the week, I'd say. Written by Kenny Porter, Miguel Mendoca on art, Adriana Lucas on colors, Tom Napolitano on letters. The art's fantastic. I'm a big fan of Miguel Mendoca. But the story, I mean, from little things like, why does Jason Todd refer to Tim Drake as Drake? I've never heard him call Tim Drake Drake. He does it throughout the story. He would call him Robin. He would call him Tim. I don't know why he's calling him Drake. The nightmares, again, this is not anything new. Red Hood Nightmare, of course, is going to have to do with the Joker and a crowbar. And Tim is all about not being able to save his dad. And they're both subjected to those things over and over and over and over and over. They're not able to defeat them, so they're going to have to come up with a plan. That's basically it. That's the whole story. They're sucked into a nightmare, and they're going to have to try to find a way to work together, because they're both unable to overcome these respective nightmares on their own. So again, it's not treading new ground. Not much happens in the issue. Nothing happens in terms of the overall story. And this was also probably the weaker of the cover selections. I mean, the Nightmare one is, or Midnight one is okay. Other than that, I probably would have to go with the main cover as the best one. Because the others are, I mean, there's a James Stokoe one that's okay. But yeah, other than that, none of the covers really impressed me on this one. So, I don't know. Did you have a cover you thought was better than any other?
Well, I like cover B, what looks like the Nightmare one with sort of almost like a vampiric Tim Drake Robin holding up some chains over his head, and it looks. I really like the color palette there. It's dark and dreary, and it looks really good. It looks nightmarish, and it looks, I quite like it. But if I had to pick, though, I agree with you that the cover A is the best.
Does that cover? So.
Sorry. Who was that?
Sam Wolf Connolly is the artist's name, and yeah, that's creepy. That will actually give you nightmares. So
yeah, yeah, no. Well, in terms of the story itself, I agree with you. I didn't. I will say that this is probably. I think that people might be relieved. This Tim Drake. Uh, this Tim Drake is. It's funny that uh, a nightmare that Tim Drake doesn't have. I'm sure people will be happy, relieved to know that nowhere in this comic does Bernard show up. Uh, so Bernard, if you're listening, Bernard, you're not in Tim Drake's nightmare. I'm sure you're in his dreams. Relax, Tim. Relax, Bernard. You're not in Tim Drake's nightmare. So there's that. I would have put Bernard in Tim Drake's nightmare, but I'm not the writer. And I just gotta throw that in. But hey, look, Kenny Porter, writer Kenny Porter. We're seeing more and more of Kenny Porter. He's sort of like he's almost like he's an up and coming writer in training at DC. Kenny Porter knows these characters of Tim Drake and Jason Todd. He knows them well enough. The problem is, so do we, the readers. But I will say he makes the best of it. He makes the best of it because just like Tim Drake failed to save his father in Identity Crisis and was killed by Captain Boomerang, in the same manner, Jason Todd failed to save, or at least has issues with his, failed to save his mother and ultimately ends up getting killed by the Joker. Those are pivotal events in the life of both those characters. So this is about both Jason Todd and Tim Drake having those particular issues, and Insomnia going to town and making the most of it. I like the fact that Kenny Porter makes it clear that Tim Drake is the detective. Unlike other heroes, Tim Drake does not know what Damian Wayne knows. Tim Drake doesn't know what Batman knows. But Tim Drake manages to deduce from the morphing landscape, the strange logic, and the mental leaps that he's experiencing that they're in a dream world. He deduces that they're dreaming. So Kenny Porter really does script a very intelligent Tim Drake, who's very well spoken, very intelligent. He gets Jason Todd being a smart ass, sort of a smart aleck, sarcastic, member of the Bat family, probably the most sarcastic, and it works. And in the end, they sort of help each other out. And it ends, as I said, it's the art's fantastic. Miguel Mendonca's art really is great. Adriana Lucas' colors are really good. But again, is it anything we haven't seen already, seen before? Again, I'll say this entire summer event, is probably better maybe to pull in new readers because, maybe the newer readers, because these fears really are endemic to these characters. And so if you don't know a lot about these characters or you just want to get caught up on them, this event might be really good, might be new reader friendly in that respect.
Yeah, I agree. Fortunately for us, it's a bit redundant.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. We have Night Terrors: The Flash, #1, written by Alex Paknadel. Art is by Daniel Bayliss. Colors by Igor Monti. Letters by Simon Bolin. Again, we're not treading new ground here, but this does have a lot of fantastic covers. From start to finish, might be the best in terms of the quality of cover. Every one of them is fantastic, particularly like the Torrin Clark one with these different shards of Barry in the background. And then there's also one by Daniel Bayliss, who does the interior art where the Flash costume is empty, which is really cool looking. So yeah, this one is great. But this is basically sort of a flashback to the first time that Wally West, Kid Flash, met Gorilla Grodd, first time they fought, and Wally was gravely injured. This is Barry's nightmare, not being able to protect his family. And it's not anything new. And he's running around. He's trying to figure things out, as it were. He goes to Iron Heights Penitentiary, and this is kind of creepy. He goes to Iron Heights Penitentiary to confront Grodd and to get some answers to what's going on. And there's blood leaking out from from underneath a lot of the cell doors. And it's Warden Wolf who's in charge there, a very young Warden Wolf. And he says the reason the blood's leaking out is because a lot of the inmates don't want to fall asleep, so they're cutting their eyelids off. That was like a little, why the hell are we doing that? So yeah, that was kind of rough. I didn't appreciate it. And you know what? I just remembered I wanted to mention, just to go back to the Nightmare or the Night Terrors Robin issue. Remember how I said they all had at least one great laugh out loud line when Jason and Tim are interacting, and Tim's talking about what particular things mean as he's trying to figure things out. Like Rocky mentioned, him being the detective. Jason Todd's answer of "You need a magnifying glass to look even farther up Batman's ass."
Yeah.
That one, yeah, that one had me. That one had me laughing out loud. But anyway, this is a fun issue in terms of flashing back. I like that Alex Packnadel is linking Barry's fear, which is again a fear we would expect him to have, not being able to protect his family, but he's going back and he's linking it to a specific event that actually happened in a DC comic, right? With facing Kid Flash for the first time and Kid Flash getting gravely injured. So that to me was the best thing about this issue. The art is really strong as well. What this Speed Force monster might be, I almost thought, is the monster Barry himself? Because that would make sense as well. Barry feeling like not only can he not protect his family, and it still may be the case, not only can he not protect his family, but the reason that Wally is in danger in the first place or gets hurt in the first place is because Barry allowed him to be Kid Flash. Or in some of the cases of the Flash family, maybe Barry, had a hand in them gaining their power. They became part of the Flash family. Now they're, putting themselves in harm's way. So Barry takes it all on himself. Again, not anything new. Barry's definitely somebody who carries a lot of guilt around. I don't think Barry's Catholic, but he definitely feels like he's got that Catholic guilt. So overall, this was a decent issue. Again, we're not treading new ground. But it was fun. What do you think?
Yeah, I didn't quite understand the end when he says, "I see Wally's monster," that somehow there's this monster. I wasn't sure if he was speaking, uh, I wasn't sure if he was speaking literally or figuratively.
There was a few times when Wally was talking about in his fight with Grodd, the reason he slowed down is he saw some monster in the Speed Force that caused him to slow down. And that's what I'm saying. Is that monster? Because Barry, he kind of tries to travel back in time to save
Right.
Wally at that moment. And so
Yeah.
I was like, well, he's going to go back, and he's the one that's distracting
Yeah.
Wally.
I think you're
So
right. Yeah. I think you're right because it makes sense that Barry is the villain because, well, I mean, let's face it, Barry always seems to have a habit of screwing up time, and he always seems to be. I mean, all the Speed villains are they're all pissed off at Barry, and or Wally, and they're well, it is what it is. But in any event, I like the callbacks to JSA Classified #8 and to Final Night #4. I loved Hal Jordan showing up, which Hal Jordan having the face after Final Night #4 when he was Parallax and he gave his life replacing Pharaoh Lad to save the Earth from the Sun Eater, and then here it shows a Hal Jordan with a burned face. I thought that actually was. I remember that because I love Final Night. That was one of my favorite. Issues. I'm trying to find the picture with there it is with Hal Jordan or as Parallax. Yeah. I enjoyed that. Again, nice callbacks here. I like the call, even the reference of Gorilla Grodd using the Spear of Destiny, which I think of the Spear of Destiny. I think of Adolf Hitler and the Justice Society all those classic stories. And so it was a nice callback there. And the fact that Barry Allen always fears that Wally West dying and him failing, it makes sense. And again, I enjoy it. Alex Packnadel shows he knows the characters. Daniel Bayliss' art I thought was really good. It was impressive. I enjoyed it. I think you called it that Barry Allen is going to be his own nightmare because it makes the most sense. And we'll see how it plays out and how they get out of this. And just as a quick note here, it's interesting that Barry Allen is supposed to be. He should be. You would think that he would have enough detective skills that he'd figure out he's in a dream. But I'm wondering if maybe being in the Speed Force all the time, it skews up his own perception, and maybe there's a lot of similarities between what's in the Speed Force versus what's in a dream world. Because Tim Drake, it didn't take long for him to figure it out, albeit he is a genius. but I would have thought Barry Allen would have been able to figure this out a little bit sooner as well. Barry Allen, he does note. Barry Allen notes that Wally West is wearing yellow and should be wearing red, but he can't make the connection that it's a dream. He knows that Hal Jordan doesn't have a burnt face, and yet he can't work it out that it's a dream. And it's really odd. Like, Barry, come on, man, snap out of it. You're usually smarter than this. So that's interesting. So just goes to show you, Tim Drake's smarter than Barry Allen, but whatever.
Yeah. Favorite cover on this one?
I would have to go with. I actually really like the zombie one. Flash flying, running as a zombie. I just don't know who drew it. Cover C.
Raphael Sarmiento, 1 in
Okay.
50 variant. So
Yeah.
yeah. Let's see. Up next, we have Night Terror's Zatanna #1, written by Dennis Culver, drawn by David Baldione, colored by Rain Barretto, letters by Pat Brosso. Interesting choice to have Dennis Culver because it says Zatanna, but she teams up with Robotman, sort of unwillingly. She's in the basement of the Hall of Justice. She's researching what's going on. She's trying to find, because she's one of the few people that's awake. Red Tornado is working with a lot of the different robots and androids and what have you, trying to sort of halt the disasters that would happen if everybody fell asleep at the same time. You got planes in the air, you got people undergoing surgery, that sort of thing. And so she's down there and she's trying to research and figure out how to wake everybody up, find a spell when the sleepless nights attack her, and she needs some help. And so she says, bring me a champion, as much as she doesn't like flying blind with her magic. And who shows up but Robotman? And she's like, oh man, these Doom Patrol people, they're not to be trusted. Something always goes wrong with them. So she's not really happy when he shows up. It ends up working out between the two of them. They sort of find some common ground, if you will. So the David Baldione art is probably the art, and don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of David Baldione. I love his artwork. But it's probably the artwork that sort of least suits a horror book because he does have a little bit of a cartoony style. That being said, he's such a talented artist. He makes it work. And a lot of credit to Rain Barretto, the colorist, as well, for adding their work to it to make sure that David Baldione's art comes across in the best possible light when it's basically a horror story. Unfortunately, even though Zatanna and Robotman come to understanding and are working well together, Robotman gets infected. One of the sleepless nights says, "You're knighted," and stabs him through the back and basically turns him into a sleepless night called the Rustbringer. And it reminded me a little bit of the Scarecrow, or not the Scarecrow, but the Tin Man and the Wizard of Oz. We've seen various iterations of the Wizard of Oz / horror over the years. Where the Tin Man gets corrupted. It kind of reminded me of that. So we'll see. Hunted by Robotman is the next issue. But yeah, this one was fun. But as much as it was fun, it was great to see the art from David Baldione. This one might have felt like the least necessary of all of them. It's a fantastic cover. It's almost like again, Rock and I are saying there's so many great covers. This one is almost like you took an Adam Hughes Zatanna cover. He did so many of them back in the day that are now very pricey because everybody wants them. But it's almost like somebody took one of those beautiful covers and like corrupted it, right? She's like zombified. Her tights are torn. There's blood all over her face, what have you. It's pretty gross looking in a lot of ways. The artist is Kendrick Lim on that one. So that's probably my favorite cover. So
yeah.
What about you? Favorite cover before you talk about the book?
Yeah, my favorite cover is the next one with Zatanna with the octopus around her. And I'm not sure, again, is that...
Miko Suyan.
Yeah. Great cover. Yeah. They're all good. In fact, even the artist... sorry, who?
That one's Riley Rosmo.
Riley Rosmo. Even Riley Rosmo's cover is actually pretty good. It's actually quite well done. But I got to give compliments to David Baldione. The interior art is I really liked it, and I really found it very appropriate. I thought it was fantastic, and the coloring is by to Rain Barretto's color is fantastic. When Zatanna's weaving her magic. The use of the different colors and the light when she's fighting the Sleepless Night looks absolutely fantastic. Zatanna looks like a lone warrior fighting alone in the dark against the forces of true evil. I mean, all that cliche, but it looks fantastic. And then all of a sudden, man, it's so. I mean, it was just such an epic moment when she says, "Bring me a champion." And then, I mean, honestly, I know this is going to sound stupid, but I was so involved in this. I thought that when I got to this page, even though on the cover, even though on the cover, Robot Man's on the cover, when she says, "Bring me a champion," I was surprised when Robot Man shows up because I never expected him to be the champion, even though he's on the cover, and even though I knew Dennis Culver was the writer. That's how into this story I was, and I was still surprised. And I thought, how cool is that? Because there's something what's great about Magic. What I like about Magic-based heroes is the same thing that I don't like about Magic-based heroes, and that is the rules are crazy and you don't always know what the rules are. Well, this is one time where I'm glad. It's sort of like when she says she calls upon the Magic world to bring me a champion. That's a pretty vague request. I mean, what criteria is the Magic realm going to use to pick a champion, and how on earth did they arrive at Robot Man? And so I'm thinking to myself, there has to be a reason why Robot Man was chosen. I like to think that, other than the fact that Dennis Culver just wanted to use him because he writes Doom Patrol, you know what I mean? So I hope that there's a good in-story reason for that. And anyways, I really like it. And I want to give a shout out to artist David Baldion again for the maze. They come across a maze at one point. Zatanna they're escaping. Her and Robot Man are escaping through a maze, and this is after they've rescued and brought Wonder Woman and Bibble and the detective chimp to safety. And it's just well done. I mean, that takes a lot of work to just draw a maze in the middle of a comic like that. And I thought it was well done. And then we even got David Baldion through and the fears that Zatanna has, drawing an amazing Zatanna and playing on Zatara is Zatanna's father. And of course he works on her insecurities. Again, if this is a good reminder, as all these Night Terror issues are, as to who these characters are and what you want to get to know somebody quick, find out what they fear the most. And that's really what these stories are doing. But I enjoyed this one. This was good.
Yeah, that does it for the Night Terrors books, everybody. So if you're speeding along, you can now take it off and fast forward and listen to the non-Night Terrors issues. So we're going to kick it off with Spirit World number 3, written by Alyssa Wong. Hanning is the artist, Sebastian Chang on colors, Janice Chang on letters. So this was really action-packed, almost from start to finish. It's action. We finally have all 3 of our main heroes, I guess we'd say, John Constantine, the Cassandra Cain Batgirl, and Xanthi all finally get together in the dream world. They're fighting against this monster, the Beast with 1,000 eyes, and trying to figure out exactly what's going on, who's put them in this section, who's trying to break out of the spirit world, as it were. They're trying to not sell their soul to this demon that they had talked about, this information broker that they went to for answers. Shen is her name. So a lot of parts of the story that have been laid out are starting to come together. And it's pretty interesting. We get some clue that we're seeing the big bad finally, although we don't really have a name other than Beast of 1,000 Eyes. I mean, she's depicted as this woman with this bluish green skin, and she's got eyes everywhere, as I would say, like even on her chest and her breast. It's a very strange depiction of her. But what she wants, other than to just break out of the dream world, and how Xanthi might be a part of that, I guess we're going to have to wait and see. I thought the art was so good in this issue. It not to the point that it pulled me out of the story, but as I was reading, I was aware, man, this art is fantastic. Now, don't get me wrong. I thought the art in the first 2 issues was fine. But it feels like the artist Hanning really stepped their game up. And I don't know if it's just them it took them a couple issues to sort of feel comfortable, and now they're just like letting loose with all their talent. But man, the art in this just blew me away for being. I don't want to say this is a horror title, but when you're talking about the spirit world, you're dealing with monsters, you're dealing with people, uh, characters who are dead, basically. So you would expect a little bit darker color palette, but very bright colors, and it really works. I will say that Hanning's art does have quite a bit of almost an anime or a manga influence. So a lot of characters, they've got the real big eyes. There's specifically a panel with Cassandra King where she says, "I'm Batgirl," and she's got the very small chin, almost like an upside down triangle shaped face and really big eyes, which again, looks very manga. So yeah, that panel there, the bottom one. Some people may have a little trouble with that, saying, it's not what Cassandra King looks like, but it works. The art, I think, is very, very strong in this. So I will say that Spirit World so far as a series is making me feel like it's going to read better in a trade, just because Alyssa Wong is stuffing so much in. It's a very fast-paced issue, but it's a limited series, and I'm sure that space was at a premium. So if it feels like it's moving along at a breakneck pace and you feel a little lost at times, don't worry. Reread it all in one sitting, or if you read it in the trade, I'm sure it'll read just fine. But yeah, I was very impressed. I'm enjoying the series. I think Xanthi's a very interesting character. I won't go so far as to say it felt like a little tokenism when she was created, this non-binary Asian character. So it's checking a lot of, diversity boxes as far as, being a female or appearing to be female, actually being non-binary and also Asian. But she's just a great character, or they're just a great character, I should say. So curious to see how they'll fit into the ongoing DCU. We know the Magic corner of the DC universe at times sort of rises up in importance, and how well that's done is a matter of, you could argue that the Lazarus Reign event was a magical event, but in terms of showcasing those characters, I don't think it really did a very good. It could have done such a better job if it had been a more coherent event instead of just, a first issue Alpha, second issue Omega that really was the whole event, and then all these one-shot anthologies where it's better to involve these characters in an event where they interact with each other and they have an actual mission, as opposed to just throwing all these stories at the wall. Now, from a creator perspective, I understand why you do it that way. It gives DC a chance to give all these different creators who haven't had a chance before, hey, let's see what they can do. We'll put them on an 8-page that's going to go in this anthology, and maybe we'll discover some new talent. So I get it. I get that. But from a reader perspective, it's not as rewarding, and I don't think it lends itself to developing new characters like Xanthi as when you're just getting little 8-pagers here and there from various creators. So anyway, what'd you think of Spirit World 3?
I continue to struggle a little bit with getting a handle on this new world, but it reminds me a little bit of how I felt at the beginning of Monkey Prince, and that really paid off for me. My patience and my rereading paid off, and I want to be. I'm very much prepared to cut Spirit World some slack here, because this is a brand new character to me. And you know what? The challenge that I enjoy is, I'm trying to remember how often in the DC universe does one really get a chance to delve into a brand new universe with a brand new character right from scratch. And you know what? I remember when I was young, when I first started reading comics, I think the first comic I read was in the middle, right smack dab in the middle of a Superboy and Legion of Superheroes comic book arc. And I didn't know what was going on, but I was totally up for the challenge, and I became a lifelong comic collector. If I could do it when I'm 6 and 7 years old, I'm sure I can do it when I'm as old as I am now. So now,
Was that the Superboy and Legion where the chains were encircling the Earth?
I'm trying to remember the name of the villain. The guy did have chains. He did have chains, but they were back issues. But so they were older than. I can't remember the name of the villain. Because it's a classic. We'll talk later, but I'll show you the comic. I still have it, but
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, but in any event, yeah. But so anyway, so when I read Spirit World, I admit that I don't entirely know. I mean, this Shen is an info broker about Spirit World, and they're getting information from this Shen character. Cassandra Cain is looking for people that she promised to help that are lost in this Spirit World. And the longer the living stay in Spirit World, the closer they're going to. It's terrible for them because only the dead can live in Spirit World. And meanwhile, there's this Jade, this villain called Jade, who wants to feed off the living and wants to feed off Batgirl and feed off Constantine. And I don't really know why the spirit world exists, quite frankly. I don't know what the purpose is. Why, if there's a heaven and hell, what need of you of the spirit world? There's so many questions I have that I would normally expect to see in an origin, but none of that's been explained to me to my satisfaction yet. So I still don't really understand the existence of spirit world, quite frankly. But I'm still intrigued enough by the story. I also find myself, the most interesting aspect I thought was there was a flashback when Shen bit into Cassandra Cain. He saw into Cassandra Cain's past, and it showed images of Cassandra Cain being killed by her mother, Lady Shiva, and that was in the classic that was in the classic original 73 issue Batgirl run that culminated in Destruction's daughter, a fantastic story arc. But when Lady Shiva at one point killed her daughter and then resurrected her in the Lazarus pit. And what I find interesting is, my question is, and I'm probably assuming too much on the part of the writer Alyssa Wong here, but Cassandra Cain has some experience with death. She's been killed and she's been resurrected. And I'm wondering that since Cassandra Cain has been, in fact, dead and then resurrected in the Lazarus pit, does that maybe give her some extra abilities in Spirit World? Probably not, but I found myself really fascinated by that aspect of it because it showed the background of Cassandra Cain. I would have no problem with Cassandra Cain becoming maybe a permanent maybe a partner to Xanthi and or in future stories, because I think that's fascinating because just because of Cassandra Cain's background. But in any event, I thought that was interesting, and I'm curious to see how this all wraps up. I'm definitely prepared to cut this character some slack, even though it was a little bit lost in the last issue in terms of what it was trying to do. This whole I enjoy it, and the art. Kudos to the artist. Who is the artist here? Oh, Haney. Yeah, really good art. Yeah, good stuff.
All right, up next we have Batman Incorporated issue number 10 from writer Ed Brisson, John Timms, Michelle Bandini, and David Lafuente as artists, Rex Locus on colors, Clayton Cowell on letters. What'd you think?
This is probably one of my favorite issues. It's starting to come together. I don't know about you, but just my luck here. The images aren't appearing on the screen here. Just a minute. We know that the Joker has essentially put Batman Incorporated in an impossible position that's testing their code against killing. And Joker has his own group of clowns that he's got all over the globe and is testing all the members of Batman Incorporated. And it's basically testing them in such a way that is saying, look, if you guys, you're either going to, the Joker tells Ghostmaker that your fellow members of Batman Incorporated are going to have to kill my members of Joker Incorporated because I've put bombs in all the members of Joker Incorporated have got bombs in their head. And unless you kill them, those bombs are going to go off. And so it's a sort of an impossible situation. And Ghostmaker appears in this issue to be all but certain. He is basically given the order to all members of Batman Incorporated to take out the person you're facing. So, and this results in Raven Red facing off against Dusty Bronco, who killed his father in a previous issue. And we've got Dark Ranger facing off against Corvus Crawl, who ends up killing Wingman, because Wingman was killed by Corvus Crawl last issue, because Dark Ranger wanted to prevent Wingman from killing Corvus Crawl, and he unfortunately Dark Ranger distracted Wingman and from killing Corvus Crawl, and Corvus Crawl kills Wingman, and that sends Dark Ranger then has to take out Corvus Crawl in such a way as to not to kill him. But Ghostmaker's telling Dark Ranger, you have to kill him. You have to kill him because if you don't kill him, he's gonna blow up, and many innocents, more innocents are gonna die. And that's just one. There's multiple scenarios here. Kudos to Ed Brisson who manages to take multiple fighting sequences and make sense out of all of them in such a way that he does it really masterfully here. And just going, one at a time here, the Batman of China confronts Ghostmaker at the end and basically tells Ghostmaker that, come hell or high water, we're going to find a way to do this without killing anybody. But meanwhile, we got, as I said, we got Raven Red facing off against the Dusty Bronco, who wants to get revenge on him for killing his dad. We got Dark Ranger, who in a moment of unbelievable sacrifice utilizes a bomb to blow up the ground and the crater created by the explosion. He takes Corvus Crawl, and just before Corvus Crawl is going to explode, he sacrifices his life by pushing Corvus Crawl into the crater, and he sacrifices his life. So at the end of this issue, we got 2 members of Joker Incorporated killed. We got 2 members of Batman Incorporated killed. We got Wingman and Dark Ranger both dead, and we got casualties on both sides. And meanwhile, we got the Batman of China is telling Ghostmaker, look, no more people are going to die here. We've got to figure out a way to end this, to defeat the Joker without killing more people, especially if we're doing this intentionally. And meanwhile, the issue ends. We know that Gyro Raven Red is facing off against Dusty Bronco, and we know that the Knight and Grey Wolf end up confronting Die Laughing, and Die Laughing is one character who decides to betray the Joker, and he gives them a clue. He gives the Knight actually a clue by gives her a pill, or it looks like to be a pill in a bottle, to give them some evidence of what they can, so that they can figure out how they can shut off the device that is making the bombs go off that are killing so many people. And now Die Laughing is doing that because he thinks the Joker's too cocky and is too big for his britches, and he figures the only way he can ultimately survive this Die Laughing is if he or Die Laughing or whatever, is if maybe the Knight and Grey Wolf can figure out how to utilize, to maybe, I don't know, reverse engineer the device to create it to prevent the bombs from going off. Anyways, there's so much crammed in this issue. It's almost frustrating. It's like as frustrating as I've been with Ed Brisson, John Timms, the artist, does a really good job here. There's so many multiple settings. I mean, if this was a movie, this would be too many scenes. There would be too many cutaway scenes for the movie. But somehow in this issue, it just seems to work because they're all over the world here. That we got members of Joker Incorporated fighting Batman Incorporated, and I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to some of my friends on the chat at Weird Science DC who have made a prediction. And I don't know, I think maybe, Jace, you made this as well. Maybe you did. That the prediction was that Wingman was really Bruce Wayne. And that is Wingman really Bruce Wayne? Now, Wingman is killed. But could this entire thing be an elaborate test for Ghostmaker? Could Batman be orchestrating all of this just to test Ghostmaker to see if Ghostmaker will kill? And because it makes you wonder, because there are some characters that we don't know who they are. Now, I don't see the clues. I don't see that, but I'm wondering if that's the case. Is Batman really one of the characters of Batman Incorporated that we don't know enough about? I don't know, but man, I'm really enjoying this. Lots of questions, and I don't know. I'd be curious to know your thoughts.
Yeah, I did not make that prediction. I don't think that's the case. Would be interesting if so. The one thing I'll say is I wasn't real happy with having 3 artists on this. I thought John Timms, was the artist that kicked it off. His art is fantastic. Michelle Bandini, she's done a few issues on her own as well. I also think her art is fantastic. It's the La Fuente art, I think, that just doesn't suit the tone of the book. And it's interesting. La Fuente has done a few other things for DC recently, and I kind of just wonder, like, why is he doing so much stuff at DC? It seems like they're giving him, hey, here's a few pages here, here's a few pages there. As an artist, I got to think that's kind of frustrating to not just have a regular gig so you can kind of get your feet under you. We just talked about Spirit World and how I felt like Hanning has leveled up their art as the story has gone along. So it just, again, the LaFuente, nothing against David LaFuente. It doesn't, the style's so different than the other two artists, and it just doesn't suit kind of the stakes of the story, because that's what it's all about here, right? We're talking about stakes. We're talking about life and death. And I love that Ed Brisson is, he's exploring that when it comes to Batman's choice not to kill. What does it mean? Is it the best way? There's that line here where Ghostmaker says, this is Batman's fault. If he would have taken care of the Joker a long time ago, we wouldn't even be in this position right now. So it's a philosophical question, and it makes a lot of sense. It works for me. So I appreciate what Brisson is doing. I think they already announced the end of the series, right? I think there's only like 12 issues. It wasn't initially announced as a limited, but I think it turns out to be a limited series. Does that sound familiar to you at all?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure this ends at 12. I thought this was a 12-issue series myself. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to be disappointed, as sort of confusing as it was early on, just in terms of there's just so many characters, like we've mentioned many, many times. But it works. It works. So I'm happy with what we're getting here.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Up next, we have Wildcats number 9. This has been a struggle for you, this series. So I'm curious what you thought of this one, because you did mention, I think it might have been before we started recording, that you really enjoyed it this week. So Wildcats number 9, writer Matthew Rosenberg, Danny Kim and Tom Derenick are the artists, Elmer Santos on colors, Ferran Delgado on letters. What are your thoughts?
Well, sorry, I'm having problems accessing the comics here, but look, this has been somewhat convoluted at times. I've been up and down with this series. There have been individual issues that I really liked, where I felt it was clear, and then there would be an issue that would confuse me. This issue, I think, it sort of brought a lot home, and this one I liked it, and probably not surprising, the reason why I liked it so much is that it actually does have Wildcat kissing Zealot on the cover, and it's got a hell of a beautiful cover B as well. I'm not sure who the artist is, but man, the variant covers are gorgeous on this. Like really, really good. Cover C is really good. But in any event,
Paolo Pantalina on that cover, and yeah, far and away my favorite cover. It's just so good. So
yeah. Yeah, no, it's gorgeous. And no, so basically, we know Cole Cash, our grifter from our universe, is actually trapped in another universe, and he's on a mission to essentially take out. He's there to rescue Adriana, and one of the things that confused me is, because Grifter was killed about 4 or 5 issues ago, and then it was found that his body was replaced by a body from another Grifter in another universe, and they can never figure out why. And then Grifter was having this other adventures in this other universe, and we have 2 adventures going on. They seem completely disconnected. It didn't really seem to work here. And this here, we get a little bit more of an explanation because finally John Lynch shows up, and John Lynch, basically the Wildcats, finally they're talking to put everything together, and that is that it's just confirming that the Court of Owls is this Jason Halliday character is trying to take out the Wildcats, and he's part of the Court of Owls. And that's something that should have been, I think, more clear or stated without so much plot side plots earlier on. I mean, we knew that the Court of Owls showed up at the end of issue 1. We knew that. And then Jason Halliday showed up, and we knew that Jason Halliday was making a play and manipulating Marlowe and the Wildcats. So yes, we always knew that. But getting to this point has been somewhat of a frustrating run. But we're finally here, and finally the Wildcats are starting to fight back in a little bit more of a coherent fashion. John Lynch is is finally starting to come into the fray, and they're finally starting to maybe make their move against Jason Halliday. They have to rescue Voodoo, who is trapped, and who's basically being she's. There's a great scene where she's actually being. They attempt to essentially torture her, and just some really great work is done here. And the way that she takes them out, is is it's really good. There's some great plot sequences, and all with the goal here of basically saving the Wildcats from being destroyed, basically killed by Jason Halliday and his own eclectic team of villains that he sort of put together over the last 9 issues. And meanwhile, Cole Cash is, Zealot in this other universe, loves the Grifter in our universe, and she wants to, in order to get back to our universe, Grifter has to basically kill Adriana, and his brother, who died in our universe, is alive in the other universe, and he has to. Unfortunately, his brother won't let him kill Adriana, but he needs to in order to get back to his right time. And it was actually heartfelt. And Zealot ends up killing his brother, and then he ends up killing Zealot, who he loves in our time. So it's this crazy love triangle: his love for his brother, his brotherly love, and then his love for Zealot. And it's honestly, if you in a crazy way, it kind of worked for me, but at the same time I can see the how all of it together, it is a little wonky. This is definitely one of those stories that it's going to read so much better as a trade. I wish, as so often the case with Matthew Rosenberg, I wish this was a case where I didn't have to say it would read better as a trade, because I like this issue, but in order to really get the most out of this issue, we were waiting way too long for these payoffs. Way too long for these payoffs. It didn't have to take this long, like 5 or 6 issues. We shouldn't have had to wait this long. Again, I found myself satisfied enough, but as I'm talking about it, I actually realize I'm more disappointed with it than not. But it's finally getting toward the end. But I wish moving forward, this is going to end up being a 12-issue series that should have taken place in 6 issues, quite frankly. But what do you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, I get your point. And I will also say that I think it's a situation where if you know a lot about the Wildcats, you're going to get more out of it as well. But yeah, it is going to read better in a trade. This story has been, I've talked so much about it being a political story, and at times it definitely has been. This is more puts the politics to the side a little bit. I mean, there's a little bit of machinations with people going after Marlowe and trying to get information from Voodoo and what have you. But for the most part, this is an action-oriented issue. And so I think I've noticed that when we have the oriented issues from Matthew Rosenberg, that's when you're like, oh yeah, this is better. I'm enjoying this issue. It's better than I've been given it credit for. So I find that to be interesting. And again, it makes sense that it works for you on that level. I will say that there was as is often the case with Matthew Rosenberg, there's always a line or two that makes you laugh out loud. And for this one, it's when Grifter, he's in there with Adriana, he's in there with Void, that world's version of Void. Hey, I'm here to break you out, what have you. She's like, no, I like it here. It's peaceful. It's quiet. And he's talking about the various, like, what's all this stuff floating around? She's like, oh, it's parts of this asteroid. It takes away my powers and whatever. But be careful. You shouldn't breathe it in too long. It's harmful for you. She doesn't want to leave. It's peaceful there. And Grifter's line, yeah, it's great. I'm getting lung cancer from all this peace. Right? There's so much peace in that chamber. But he's getting lung cancer because he's breathing an asteroid. So that was just a laugh out loud moment for me. So I agree with you. It's probably going to read better as a trade, which isn't always ideal, like you mentioned. Because the other aspect of that is kind of to have to wait for a trade. But I also think that for longtime listener or longtime readers of Wildcats, you're going to get a lot out of this as well. Because again, I think that there's just a lot here that plays on concepts from previous Wildcat stories. So there's that aspect of it as well. So yeah, I'm a big fan. I think this is working for me, and the art was really fantastic. I didn't mind that we had several different artists on it, like we've had in the past. I think it's for the most part working. Segovia and Santos's, or sorry, Danny Kim and Tom Derenick's art is similar enough. And the other thing that I really liked about it, we don't often get to see Voodoo showcase her abilities as a fighter. A lot of times it's to do with her mental powers. So for her to be able to like take out these on a physical level was pretty fun as well. So
Yeah. No.
all right, up next we have World's Finest Teen Titans #1 from writer Mark Waid. Emmanuel Lupacchino is the artist. Jordi Belair on colors. Steve Wands on letters. This is sort of a flashback, a throwback, which Mark Waid has been doing quite a bit of lately. It works on that level in terms of, hey, this is a bit of a flashback to a bygone era, if you will, when the Titans were first formed. They're wearing their classic costumes. And it's a lot of fun. Part of what I really enjoyed about it was seeing so many of these characters talk to their mentors, if you will. It's Dick Grayson talking to Robin. It's Aqualad talking to Aquaman. Donna Troy talking to Wonder Woman. Speedy trying to talk to Oliver. Getting to see a lot more of Bumblebee than we may have been used to in the past. All that sort of thing really works for me. So yeah, I was pretty impressed. Lupacchino's art. She's doing something different with her art than we've seen her do before, to kind of go back to a more simpler time, cleaner lines, not real heavy in detail on the background, which goes back and sort of harkens back to that era of Teen Titans. So for those that aren't familiar with Teen Titans, this is probably one that you'll enjoy. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a big Teen Titans guy, to be honest with you. Even the classic Wolfman Perez stuff's only okay for me. But this is going back to, times before that, back to the Silver Age. So for me, the Doc Shaner cover with Dick Grayson is the one to get. But yeah, overall, this was okay. The team dynamics with Speedy, it's interesting because, I'm saying this is a throwback to an earlier time, and it is in a way, but it's also set in modern day. It's almost like if the Teen Titans, if these sidekicks were to decide to form a team, the original sidekicks for all these heroes were to decide to form a team in modern times when they're still teenagers, what does that look like, right? So we're talking about, a modern iteration of that classic team, because one of the things that Speedy does that's annoying Dick so much is dealing with social media, right? Filming their battles with drones, interacting with fans and other people on social media, and he's using it the way I look at it. He's using it as a way to get attention, because he's craving some attention from Oliver Queen, who's not there for him. He's busy being Green Arrow. He's busy running his company, and he's just looking for. And I don't want to say he's craving attention in a bad way. Like he just needs somebody to talk to. He needs somebody to listen. He needs somebody to be a friend. And rather than trying to connect with his teammates who all have their own mentors, and maybe he'll get there. This is the very beginning of the team. Maybe he'll get there. Instead, he's reaching out to strangers through social media. That's where he's looking for validation that he's not getting from Oliver Queen. So that's sort of that subplot is there. It's a little more advanced. You don't necessarily need to focus on that if you're a younger reader, because this is very new reader friendly, and it does feel very classic. But that's interesting to me, to the idea of these kids at the beginnings of their careers, but if the beginnings of their careers were now, that's interesting, right? Because you couldn't deal with those kind of issues in the book when it came out in the 60s when Teen Titans first started, because there was no social media back then. Some would say the world was a better place, but that's neither here nor there. But anyway, it's interesting. Leave it to Mark Waid to explore this. Mark's going to be coming on the show soon to talk about Irredeemable, but of course, we're going to touch on World's Finest, and we'll talk about this as well, because I think that's such an interesting to the story, taking these classic teenage sidekick heroes and having them form the Teen Titans in current time. That lends itself to a lot of interesting things to explore. So, What did you think of this?
I thought this was really good. I have to admit that what threw me off was it threw me off first negatively. I thought, how are they using smartphones? And then suddenly it hit me, and I'm like, duh. Well, they're using smartphones because the DC timeline is extremely tight. This is really only maybe 5 years ago. I mean, when Nightwing, when Robin joined the Titans, he was what, maybe 15 or 16, and now he's 20, like maybe this was 5 or 10 years ago. But if this is based on modern times, going 10 years ago, it just occurred to me that we still had smartphones 10 years ago. I mean, my God. So it made me realize that Mark Waid is doing something that needs to be done if comic books are supposed to appeal to a new generation, and that is, you know, the golden age of heroes is going to the timelines have to be moved up, and because of technology are increasing so fast, from 1990, I think what Facebook debuted in 1996. I mean, the technological revolution which has impacted our society is so huge that, I mean, in the last 23, 25 years, it's been huge. And so that has to be reflected in some way in the initial original years of these Teen Titans. And Mark Waid very wisely, and I think very brilliantly, utilized the character of Roy Harper, and you absolutely nailed it. And it's reflected in the story that, of course, Roy Harper would be more prone to love social media. He's not getting attention from Green Arrow, so naturally he loves the attention of social media. Although, what does that say for the rest of us? Do I need more attention from my own family? But in any event, I thought it was some good character work. I like Dick Grayson's frustrations. I like Donna Troy's conversations with Wonder Woman. Uh, I want to give some compliments to Mark Waid, who by his own admission says he doesn't understand Wonder Woman, but I think he understands Diana well enough. When Diana makes a comment about Batman, she tells Donna that, I do know that Batman likes to cast a large shadow. Batman figures that no one on the Titans is as experienced as Dick Grayson, and of course we got Green Arrow is not exactly around enough for Roy. We got Aquaman giving advice to Tempest, who will at the time, or I think it was Aqualad at the time, was having a relationship with Donna Troy. This all comes together very well. And again, this is something that in masterfully Mark Waid's kind of way, he's telling these past stories that we can look back, and these past stories can be incorporated in present day storylines. And that's really the brilliant way of doing it. You can tell past stories and current stories and connect them at the same time, which he's already done in the pages of World's Finest. So I thought this was pretty damn good.
Yeah, moving on, we have Superman Lost #5, written by Christopher Priest, plot and script, Carlo Pagulian, plot and pencils, Jason Paz on inks, Jeremy Cox on colors, Willie Schubert handles the letters. This has been sort of an up and down series for you as well, but I think you enjoyed this issue, so give us your thoughts.
Yeah, this was Christopher Priest. This is my favorite issue so far, because this is one where, what I wanted out of this series is what he explores in this issue, and that is the psychological impact that it has on Superman on Earth. 20 years later, he spent all that time being away from home. What's the psychological impact on Superman? And what I feared this would be, and what we got too much of in earlier issues, was just a bunch of adventures that Superman's on while he's lost. Well, no. I want to see more of the psychological element. And that's what we get here. And the moments in here that really, there were so many wonderful little moments in here that I thought were so well. It starts off with Lois Lane meeting Wonder Woman, arranging a lunch date with Wonder Woman, Diana, because she wants to borrow the magic lasso. And ultimately, she wants to use the magic lasso because she wants to use it to try to help Clark, help to ground Clark into some kind of the reality, the truth of his current circumstances into actual reality. Because Clark, he's not himself at work. He's staring off into space. He's distant. He's used to silence. He's used to being alone. He's used to being isolated. And we as the readers, we're still only getting snapshot of what he went through. And while Clark is going through all this and he's struggling with this, and we get snapshots of what Clark actually did on that planet that he was on for at least 2 or 3 years or 4 or 5 years. We don't know how long he ends up on this other planet, where basically he created his own home, which looked a lot like his home in Kansas that he grew up. He's even got an alien friend that he calls Jimmy. It's pronounced Jimmy, and he meets this new Green Lantern character that he met. Her name is actually Hope. Her name is actually Hope, and it's incredible what happens because she's a Green Lantern that unfortunately for Superman she can't help him find home because when she became the Green Lantern, there was something wrong with the ring. She's lost. She doesn't even know where the Green Lantern core is. She doesn't know where Oa is. She doesn't know how to use the ring well enough. The ring is somehow flawed in some way that she can't get Superman home. And even if she could get Superman home, she falls in love with Superman during the years that they spend together on the planet. While this Jimmy character is trying to find a way using science to get Superman home, to get Clark home, Hope is falling in love with him, and you get the hint that Clark is falling in love with Hope as well. There's a scene where he's staring at Hope for one moment while she's actually in the shower, and it's a very provocatively drawn. Carlo Pagliaione's art is fantastic. Jason Paz on the inks, Jeremy Cox on the colors. She's a sexy, good-looking Green Lantern, and and she is so in love with Clark that she actually sabotages and renders unconscious Jimmy as he discovers a way to send Clark to get Clark home. And and you really begin to see exactly what Clark went through, just a hint of it. And at the end, it shows the present where Lois wraps the magic lasso around Clark, and there's just silence. And what I like about this is Christopher Priest is doing something that we don't see enough of with Superman. We're often most writers bombard most writers will make us privy to Superman's thoughts. Christopher Priest doesn't do that here. It's more powerful when Christopher Priest lets Carlo Paglianone's art speak for itself. Clark is silent. It's he's lost in his own mind, and he's going through something, and it's the magic lasso of truth where he can that grounds him into reality at the end, where he just hugs Lois, and there's that moment of solitude and silence, and he is genuinely lost. This is an appropriately named title, and I love the character work here because it forces the reader to try to imagine what Clark went through when you're floating in space for years, and all you have is silence, and then all of a sudden you're back after 20 years, and you have all this noise, and you got to make sense of all that. How do you manage all that? I think Christopher Priest in this issue in particular does a fantastic job of just giving us a hint of what that must be like. And I just thought it was so great. The character work, the art, just fantastic. So this was definitely one of my candidates for my favorite comic of the week. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the art in this book continues to be absolutely fantastic, and you covered the emotional and sort of mental aspect of it really, really well. What I do find interesting, because there was a time where I was thinking, okay, well, if he's out there for decades and what have you, and he's all alone, the solitude and what have you. And Lois even comments on it when she meets up with Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman, asks how he's doing. And it's interesting, right? Because you wonder, well, hold on a second. If he was out there for so long, then, and he was by himself, you can kind of understand how an issue with him feeling alone. But like you mentioned, we realize that he hasn't been alone. So what are we really talking about here? Are we talking about him pining after a lost love? And how is that going to sit with a lot of longtime like Lois and Wonder, Lois and Clark fans, basically that love their relationship. So how does that work? That all remains to be seen. How that's all going to work, and if it's going to work on a better level or not. But for the most part, I find it to be pretty interesting. So And then there are other aspects of the story as well. When we start talking about um, the political aspects of this planet, that the new Kansas or whatever you want to call it is, Priest doesn't forget about that. We get a little more context in terms of, yeah, hey, these people, they decided this. They decided that they wanted to be in this situation. This is what they voted for, or what have you. So that's interesting on a lot of levels as well. So this continues to be a really good story. Really enjoying it. And yeah, I mean, I can't say enough fantastic things about the artwork in it. It's just so good. Uh, so all right, up next we have Unstoppable Doom Patrol #4 from writer Dennis Culver. David LaFuente is the artist. Brian Reber on colors. Pat Brosso on letters. Interesting story here that we're getting in the 4th issue. We get a lot of this doctor here, Dr. Cinco, that we've seen in the first couple issues. She's combined herself in some way. She's communed, the way she puts it, with fifth dimensional entities. So she has basically sort of 5 personalities. There's 5 people that she channels. Jackson, Elhim, Rez, Raz, and Yizd, I guess. You can call us Jury for short. That's if you take the first letter of each of the people that she's, or entities that she's channeling, it spells Jerry. And she gets a chance to talk to different members of the Doom Patrol. So it's a way for Dennis Culver to give introduction and some background into the various characters. So this is an issue for readers who aren't that familiar with Elastigirl or Robotman or some of these other characters. And what I find interesting about it, Negative Man's another one who sits down and talks to Jerry. What I find interesting about it is Dennis Culver is taking aspects of the classic Doom Patrol, that characterization of the characters, and he's also pulling from things that Grant Morrison did and Rachel Pollack did, and he's sort of melding it all together, which is really, really interesting. And I think that's the best way to do it, right? The best way to do it is to really mine from all the previous iterations of Doom Patrol so that you're giving something to all the fans of the various eras of Doom Patrol, rather than just saying, okay, this is a sequel to what Rachel Pollack did, or a sequel to what Grant Morrison did, or forgetting about the Vertigo of the Doom Patrol and going all the way back to like the Steve Lytle version or even the Silver Age version. Instead, you're getting an amalgamation of all of it, which really opens up the storylines and story opportunities for Dennis Culver. And what it also makes me realize is that 7 issues is not really enough for Doom Patrol here, because I mean we're over halfway through. If it's only 7 issues, this is issue 4, and I feel like we're just getting started. We're really just getting started. We had the road trip issue last time. We had the first issues to kind of establish what this new status quo for Doom Patrol is, sort of a situation where it's superheroes out there sort of rescuing people who don't know and don't understand their own newfound powers that they gained during the Lazarus Reign event. So, God, I hope it's selling well, and I hope that DC extends this. I hope they make it an ongoing, like they did with the G Willow Wilson Poison Ivy, because there's so much more to be told here. And Dennis Culver is going to be at San Diego Comicon, so I'm hoping to get a chance to talk to him. If not, I'll have him on the show later. I mean, we've talked about having him on before, and I'm not even talking about wanting to talk to him to come on the show. I just want to talk to him because I'm so excited about the series, and just pick his brain and discuss it with him, because there's so much potential here. I'm really enjoying it. This is my favorite Doom Patrol series since all the way back in the 1987. That Steve Lytle drawn Doom Patrol was the last time that I really enjoyed the series. I can't remember. I'm trying to remember who wrote that, and I'm drawing a blank. But I'm going to look it up right now while you give us your thoughts, Rocky.
Well, what I like about this issue of Doom Patrol is the focus on the psychologist whose acronym is Jerry. She's got multiple personalities, and all her personalities are basically from their 5th dimensional entities that exist outside of space-time. And so because of that, she automatically already knows the deepest and darkest secrets of the Doom Patrol. She knows their psychological flaws, their maladies, and all the mental hangups that they have. And what the way in which that plays out is that when she she's able to reach them in a way that I think is she actually is probably one of the better comic book psychologists that I've ever seen depicted in a comic before. She actually Dennis Culver actually ends up giving up some pretty good sound psychology advice to all of them here. He could give a lot more advice to I'm sorry there I just keep picking up an echo here, but I hope it doesn't come through. But in any event, Jerry gives good advice to Degenerate, but Degenerate doesn't want to talk, and so he's very frustrated. And Degenerate is one of the newer characters of the Doom Patrol. She gives great advice to Rita Farr. Rita Farr feels guilty for having survived so much, so she almost has survivor's guilt, which is very interesting. I wouldn't have. I never thought of that. Rita Farr is having survivor's guilt of having survived so much, and she feels that maybe she's got one up on her teammates, and she feels guilty because she's managed to accomplish so much. Larry, the negative man, denies that he's denied his negative self for too long, and so he's looking for a purpose. Robotman is kind of a control freak. And so he's looking for, he's always wanting, he needs to let his friends in more and instead of trying to control their lives and protect them. And this new character, Corelli, has got a cruel father, and she's overcoming that. Meanwhile, we got fantastic art by, I didn't write down the artist's name.
Isn't it Lawful?
Lafiente, yeah. But there's multiple double page spreads here. Every time that when there's a focus on Degenerate, double page spread. Rita Farr, double page spread. And Robotman, double page spread. Corelli, double page spread. Just some really great art and just very well done. I suspect that this fourth issue was the issue that they added because this was originally 6 issues. It became 7 issues. And I almost think that they threw in this fourth issue because to give us a psychological profile of all the characters, and I thought it worked quite well.
Yeah, again, I hope we get more because I think this is absolutely fantastic. So we'll see. And Paul Kupperberg was the one that wrote that 1987 Doom Patrol series. I can't believe I forgot that. Also wrote a lot of the Vigilante series toward the end, which I really loved. So, all right, on to the last book we're going to talk about in detail. Danger Street, book number 7, The Creeper. Is the subtitle. Tom King is the writer, Jorge Fornes on art, Dave Stewart on colors, Clayton Cowell on letters. So give us your thoughts on this, Rocky. Bring it home.
You mean, did you say Creeper? You mean Danger Street?
Danger Street, but the title of the issue is The Creeper.
Right.
Which I don't know why he doesn't even show up in this issue. So I'm not sure why this one's titled The Creeper. So.
Yeah. Tom King has. I really had to refresh my memory on this because there must have been a month and a half delay from this and the last. I think this last issue. This is issue 7. Issue 6 came out certainly more than a month ago, if I recall. But it took a while for me to refresh my memory. But so. Once again, all these obscure 1970s characters from DC's past they're all weaved into this plot here, and we have Lady Cop was waiting to speak to the Commodore in this issue, and she's in the waiting room, and Commodore is one of the members of the Green Team, and he's trying to protect himself from being killed by he's trying to protect himself because obviously Manhunter's out there. I think there's an assassin out there trying to kill him. And meanwhile, Manhunter is hunting down at the other member of the Green Team, Abdul Smith. And we have Warlord is in jail because Lady Cop arrested him and he was apprehended in jail. And the Dingbat gang, the Dingbats of Danger Street, they captured Starman last issue, and they've formulated a plan to basically break Warlord out of prison because they want to break Warlord out of prison because they want to use Warlord, I think, to find Starman because they want to kill Starman for killing Good Looks. Meanwhile, Darkseid and the Grandmaster are really concerned because Apocalypse and New Genesis are going to be destroyed unless they somehow resurrect or find Atlas, because Atlas was the god that was, I think, empowering up the planet of Apocalypse and New Genesis somehow. I don't really understand how, but that's what they're looking for. And Orion is getting drunk in a bar because Orion was defeated by Starman a couple issues ago, and Orion's job was to find the body of Atlas and to bring it back and I think somehow resurrect it, because Apocalypse talks about in this issue about somehow using the energies of a god, because the fire pits of Apocalypse can only maintain the energies for on Apocalypse and New Genesis for so long, because the energy between the two worlds is it will slowly run out. At least that's what I can infer from all this. So all of this stuff is connected in some way, and I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure how, but it, again, this is one of those things where we're smack dab in the middle of this story, and damn, if I'm not really curious to know how the Dingbats are going to break out Warlord, and how at the end here we have Manhunter trying to kill Abdul Smith, a member of the Green Team, and the Outsiders show up and incapacitate the Manhunter on the beach where Abdul is hiding away on a beach somewhere, and the Outsiders show up to incapacitate Manhunter, and again, it. So again, we're left. That's what we're left with. We're left. Jack Ryder ends up in the waiting room with Lady Cop. He speaks to the Commodore, and so Jack Ryder might at some point be teaming up with Lady Cop. Meanwhile, we got Manhunter incapacitated by the Outsiders. We got Warlord in prison waiting to be broken out by the Dingbats, and Starman is waiting outside the prison. I think potentially waiting for the prison break to occur. And all this has to do with Darkseid and Grandfather. And again, lots of moving parts. This is a really tough comic book to try to summarize in a cohesive manner. I apologize. Maybe I'm sounding a little bit all over the place. But goddamn, this is actually a fun comic. And this is coming together. This is only issue 7. It's 12 issues long. For those that have stuck with it this far, this is sort of like a slow addiction. I have to stick with it to figure out how it ends. And so, I don't know. Are you at wit's end yet, or are you still with this story?
No, I love it. I mean, we've talked about it throughout, and it continues to be the case that you take these characters who first showed up in first issue special, and to weave a coherent story from these very seemingly disparate characters. You got everything from Lady Cop, just this woman who's a police officer, as sort of mundane as you can get when it comes to a DC character. And then you turn around and you have Darkseid. Like, that's just so interesting to me, right? Like, you're really running the gamut between the power levels of the DCU. So, yeah, I find it very interesting. I also find it interesting, like, why do the Dingbats not hold Warlord? He doesn't have any responsibility for the death of Good Looks at all. Like, he was there as well. So I find that to be kind of interesting that they don't. Apparently, he gets a pass. Apparently on Dingbat or on Good Looks' death. So yeah, pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. So well, that's going to do it for the issues that we're talking about in detail. There are a couple of other single issues that are coming out this week. We've got Looney Tunes number 273 and Batman and Scooby-Doo Mysteries number 10. And when it comes to collections this week, it looks like we have Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Omnibus hardcover. I think that's the James Tynion series. DC Mech from the Kenny Border that we talked about, his Night Terrors Robin issue. That's his series that collects issues 1 through 6. I Am Batman Volume 1. So that's the first of collection for the I Am Batman story. That's the John Ridley written story that has Jace Fox as Batman. And then finally, Suicide Squad Get Joker trade paperback, which collects that Black Label series, is out this week as well. So All right, Rocky, it's that time. Book of the week. Does anything stand out for you, head and shoulders above the rest, or
Uh,
yeah? What are your
yeah,
thoughts?
I gotta go with Superman Lost. It was the one that it just I just thought it resonated the most with me. I thought it was so well done. I thought the way Christopher Priest scripted it and the way that he let the artist sort of tell the story of what Superman was going through. I thought it was just really masterful, and it really is. The story is really coming into its own. And I got to say, I'm impressed. And I was, just like Black Adam ended on a high note. At least I really enjoyed his Black Adam run, despite some hiccups along the way. And Superman Lost has had hiccups along the way too, but man, when he nails it like he did this issue, I'm really looking forward to seeing how this ends. And I actually think that this is the type of story that could have repercussions for the character in such a way moving forward into the DC, down to the DCU, that I mean, wouldn't it be interesting that gives Superman the flaw of having some form of psychological hiccup because of this experience in Superman Lost? I think that's a way that you could still have the character be an exemplary character to look up to, but also have his own struggles as well, instead of being maybe a little bit too perfect sometimes.
Yeah, DC would never do that. I don't disagree with you. I just don't see DC doing that. And the other thing is, this idea of if he had a relationship with this girl, Hope, out there because he thought he wasn't going to get back home, you can understand it, right? Like it's not so different um, than the story we got I think it was in Tom King's Batman run where uh, Batman and Wonder Woman were
Yeah.
trapped. Um, yeah, and they
But
had
they never gave in to temptation, though. I mean, they almost kissed but didn't.
yeah, not that we know. Um, but yeah, and William Sharp's Batman Brave and the Bold kind of explores that as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not a person who ships Batman and Diana or Bruce and Diana. I'd rather, and I said this before when we had the Batman Zatanna team up in Batman Urban Legends. That's the relationship I like Batman and Zatanna together.
Mhm.
Better than I like, way better than I like Bruce and Selina, and better than I like Constantine and Zatanna as
Yeah.
well. Because who wants to be with Constantine, man? That guy's just a dick. So
Yeah.
anyway, my book of the week, I'm going to go with Wildcats. I've been enjoying it throughout. I know not every issue is for everybody because it can be a political book. There are a lot of moving parts. It can be sort of tough. And again, you get a lot more context when you understand the history of the relationships if you've gone back and read all that Wildstorm stuff from before they merged with DC. So I totally get that. It can be kind of hard to follow. But when you get an issue like this, it's less so. It's less hard to follow, right? It just this is all out action. It's a lot of fun, and it works on that level. So for me, that's going to be my book of the week. So as I
Right.
mentioned earlier, don't forget, make sure you're following us, following the Comic Source on social media, Twitter, Instagram, what have you. Upcoming San Diego Comicon. Um, if you're listening to us audio only, be sure you head over to YouTube and subscribe to Rocky's channel so you don't miss out on any of his content. Go back and look at past videos, reviews, and what have you. Ring the notification bell, subscribe, all that stuff helps us reach, have access to more creators and more press previews and all that sort of stuff. So if you are watching us on YouTube and you haven't subscribed to the Comic Source for the other audio only content, just go to wherever you get your podcast, do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe. We really appreciate it. I do have an interview coming up later this week with Rich Johnson. He is a former VP of sales at DC. He's written these really interesting guides to various comic book characters over the years. He's got one out for Captain America. He's got one out for Spider-Man. We specifically were talking about the Hulk. These guides are really great. They cover kind of the big eras of various characters, those characters that I mentioned, plus some ancillary characters for those characters. Like for instance, the Hulk talks about She-Hulk, talks about Abomination, some other characters such as that. And then there's reference in the back. Hey, if you want to learn more about this era, go and read these particular books. So look for that interview. Like I said, later this week. We appreciate the support as always. Any last words, Rocky?
No, just enjoy the summer, people out there. It's okay to avoid reading comics once in a while to enjoy the beautiful weather.
Yeah, that is, unless you live in Phoenix, where we're about to set a record for most days over 110 degrees in a row.
Yeah.
So that's not exactly ideal. But anyway, thanks for joining us, everybody. As always, that's just one more reason I'm looking forward to heading to San Diego next week to get out of this heat. But yeah, we appreciate the support as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
Catch you later.